Prior to the fall of the ancient Eldari Empire, as their people began to indulge more and more in ever-increasing acts of hedonism, sadism, and debauchery, many of the Eldari would begin to grow increasingly appalled and disgusted by their civilization's downward spiral into decadence and depravity. Some Eldari would abandon their homeworlds to seek a new life upon wild and untamed planets, rejecting the comforts of the Empire for a simpler yet more difficult way of life. These individuals would become known to the Eldari as the Exodites, and were initially seen by the rest of the Empire as being little more than narrow-minded fools. Later, others would also begin to recognize the corruption taking root within their society, and would flee upon gargantuan starships known as Craftworlds. These Craftworlds are large enough to support hundreds, if not thousands, of individual Eldari, and incorporate their own self-contained ecosystems, featuring forests, rivers, and in some cases, even mountain ranges, in addition to a number of towns and villages populated by their passenger citizens. When the Chaos god Slaanesh was born as a result of the hedonistic actions of the Eldari Empire, her birth scream would cast a great psychic shockwave that would rapidly spread across the vast expanse of the galaxy. A great tear within the fabric of reality would appear at the heart of the Eldari Dominion, dragging many planets into the warp, where they would eventually transform into twisted parodies of their former selves, which are known to the Eldari as the Crone Worlds. This warp space rift would be known by many names by many races, but would most infamously be known as the Eye of Terror. Many of the Craftworlds managed to survive the effects of Slaanesh's birth, although some were unfortunate enough to be caught within the gravitational pull of the Eye, and over time they too would be dragged into the depths of the warp. One such Craftworld that would succumb to this fate would be that of Altansar. The people of Altansar would find themselves gripped by the metaphysical power of the Eye and would become subjected to continuous demonic incursions, while, despite their best efforts, they were dragged closer and closer to the heart of this warp space rift. Altansar would battle fiercely against the powers of chaos for over 500 years, before finally being consumed by the warp. Only the Phoenix Lord Maugan-ra, the founder of the Dark Reaper Aspect Warrior Shrine, would survive the apparent death of Altansar. 10,000 years after Altansar was consumed by the warp, Abaddon the Despoiler would launch the 13th of his Black Crusades, unleashing a vast horde of traitor Legion Astartes and demonic entities against the Imperium of Man. It was at this moment that maugan-ra would journey alone into the Eye of Terror to search for the ruins of Altansar. The Phoenix Lord would discover that, somehow, his people still lived, and continued their battle against the forces of chaos. With maugan-ra's help, Altansar would succeed in escaping from the warp, successfully re-emerging into the material realm. While such an act should have resulted in joyous celebration, the people of Altansar would receive no warmth or welcome from their estranged kin. While never uttered in the Phoenix Lord's presence, the distrust of Altansar weighs heavily upon the minds of the other Craftworlds, due to their fear of potential chaotic corruption. So could Altansar have become corrupted due to its long imprisonment within the warp? It has been documented that at least some of the Eldari who still reside upon the Crone Worlds that exist within the Eye of Terror have suffered from a degree of physical corruption due to their continuous exposure to the energies of the warp. For example, within the novel Atlas Infernal, the native population of the Crone World known as Auric had become twisted into gibbering, misshapen aberrations. Because the Craftworld of Altansar had also been pulled into the Eye of Terror, and thus was subjected to continuous exposure to the warp much like the Crone Worlds were, then it would be difficult to believe that the Eldari of Altansar would remain utterly untouched by the energies of chaos. From an initial glance, it would appear that the people of Altansar have indeed been tainted in some way. The Altansari are described as having deathly pale complexions, even when compared to other members of their species, giving them an almost corpse-like appearance, and their voices are also said to be little more than thin whispers. Despite this, in all other aspects the people of Altansar appear to sport no signs of physical deformity or mutation, especially when compared to the Chrome Worlders of Auric. But even if the Altansari had suffered from physical mutation, a common side effect to prolonged exposure to warp energy, would this truly be a sign of spiritual corruption? Compared to other races, the Eldari appeared to demonstrate a more innate resilience to the influence of chaos, even to the point where they are seemingly immune to demonic possession. This would be supported within the novel Farseer, with the following quote from the Farseer Auric Stormcloud.
"It is not possible for an Eldar to be possessed by demons and live. We are protected from this face in 100 ways. For one thing, all of us have much stronger souls than you humans. All of us, to a certain degree, share what you call psyker powers. And all of us are trained from a very young age to resist the blandishments of chaos."
The idea that the soul of an Eldari is highly resilient to the corrupting influence of chaos would appear to be somewhat supported with the legend of Ahra, the fallen Phoenix Lord. According to the novel Path of the Incubi, while Ahra would repeatedly stand against the forces of chaos, the Incubi warrior known as Mor would state that he would become physically corrupted. Ahra's form would drive many of his students to madness, but despite the dark fires of chaos that burned within him, the fallen Phoenix would demand that they stand against him as a final test of their discipline and training. When the Incubi slew Ahra's physical form, his soul was said to be completely untouched by the corrupting influence of chaos. Whether the final part of this legend is indeed true or not is debatable, given how this version of the story differs from the one that is recounted upon the Craftworlds. However, this is not to say that the Eldari are completely immune to the powers of chaos, only that they are more capable of resisting its corrupting influence. While extremely rare, there have been references to Eldari Chaos Champions and Demon Princes. Shahagarthon, a demon prince of Slaanesh that existed from a time before the fall of the Eldari Empire and the awakening of She Who Thirsts, is strongly implied to be originally an Eldari. This is due to not only the Eldari's inherent connection with Slaanesh, but also because that Shahagarthon's earliest documented appearance, as detailed within the novel Farseer, was upon the world of Belial IV, one of the original Eldari homeworlds. It is also worth noting that while Auric Stormcloud states that all members of their race are trained from birth to resist the temptations of chaos, it's unclear as to whether this training was implemented before or after the fall. If the people of Altansar were subjected to this training prior to their craftworld being dragged into the warp, then they could very well indeed have resisted the temptations of the ruinous powers, thus explaining as to how they could remain spiritually pure while suffering only from some minor physical abnormalities, such as the unnaturally pale skin and whispery voices. However, if such preparations to defend against the powers of chaos were introduced after the events of the fall, then it would be hard to accept that the Altansari are completely untouched by the influence of the dark gods, despite any natural resilience that they might indeed display. But there is another possibility for the lack of corruption demonstrated by Craftworld Altansar. The 8th edition Craftworld's Codex suggests that the Altansari may have in fact pledged themselves to Inniad, the nascent Eldari god of the dead. The idea that Inniad could have somehow protected Altansar from the powers of chaos wouldn't be entirely outside the realm of possibility. While Inniad would not begin stirring within the warp until the dying days of M41, it is worth remembering that within warp space, the concept of time does not follow the laws of the material universe, as within the warp, time is capable of moving forwards, backwards, and standing still all at the same time. Indeed, a delegation from Craftworld Altansar was shown to throw their support behind Ivrain, the emissary of Iniad, during the events of the book The Fracture of Biel-Tarn. This delegation from Altansar would pledge their services to Ivrain, and would lend their aid to the Anari in their quest to recover the 5 legendary artifacts known as the Crone Swords, which are rumoured to be the keys to Iniad's awakening. Perhaps when Iniad began to stir within the warp, following Eldrad Ulfran's interrupted ritual to awaken him, the God of the Dead, after claiming Ivrain as his emissary, saw the plight of Craftworld Altansar. It's entirely possible that Iniad could have chosen Altansar to be some of the first of his followers, which in turn could explain as to why the Altansari were so willing to throw their support behind Ivrain and the Anari. If the people of Altansar are indeed truly free from the taint of chaos, then just how many tasks do the Altansari need to accomplish in order to convince their kin of their purity? Perhaps the other craft worlds will never truly trust the Altansari, and will continue to ostracize them forevermore. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.